October the 23rd. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And our purpose today is to provide feedback on the new City Hall architecture at 100% schematic design. And I'll turn it over to Kelly Dannensfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The 100% schematic design plans are before you today. This is several years in the making, from a blank slate to the creation of a master plan vision for the site to the completion of the schematic design plans today. These plans illustrate the dynamic process that we have all undertaken to achieve this point today, and it's been in close coordination with your feedback, with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen's feedback, and city staff's feedback. So we're all very appreciative of this process. And I'm thrilled to turn it over to Anna Ruth to take you through the plans today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay.
Yep.
Well, good afternoon. We're excited to be here today to share the 100% schematic design. Our objective is to review and receive feedback on the design progress. We will take this feedback received today and make the final revisions to the design prior to applying for the COA from the Historic Zoning Commission in the next design phase as part of the site plan submittal. During the next phase, we will also be bringing exterior material samples to review with you before formally submitting for the COA. We have divided the meeting into 3 parts to help keep us on track today and to ensure that we get to everything that we'd like to cover. We're going to give a 5-minute overview of each portion of the presentation, followed by a 15-minute discussion of each part. We're going to start with the design evolution of the 3-story portion of City Hall, and then move to the design development of the 2-story commercial portion of the building, and then end with the revised elevation along the alley, which is the north elevation. So on this slide are updated 3D renderings of the 3-story portion of City Hall from different vantage points on the square and 3rd Avenue. We have provided a key plan for each view so you can better see what portion of the building is being viewed in each rendering. Based on the feedback received in our previous meeting with you, we adjusted the view angles to be predominantly eye level so that you can get a better idea of how the pedestrian experiences the building. On the following slides, we'll be reviewing enlarged views of each rendering and give an overview of the changes made in response to your feedback in the last meeting. So in this first view, you can see the boardroom portion of the 3rd Avenue elevation. There was concern amongst the committee in our last meeting that that portion of the elevation was protruding too much from the rest of the facade. We reduced the projection by about half so that it no longer competes with the celebratory entrance to City Hall. It was also suggested that we eliminate the railing at the 3rd story above the entrance to City Hall. We studied this and recommend that the railing remain since it provides another level of detail and human scale that is appropriate for the celebratory entrance to a City Hall. It was also suggested that we add stone lintels to the windows between pilasters, which we have done on the windows at the 2nd level. So the committee also suggested that we divide the entrance into 3 sections. It was formally divided into 2. So now we have a pair of double doors in the center with a single door to either side. And then we've carried that 3-part division up into the arch window with wider mullions in the arch above. And then on this next slide, you can see another view of the 3rd Avenue elevation, particularly the boardroom portion of this elevation. And you can see the plaza as it wraps around the square side to the 3rd Avenue portion of the elevation. You can also see the 2-story commercial in the background past the courtyard break. And then this view is an additional view of the entrance from across the square. And you can see it within the context of the 231 Public Square building on the left and the Williamson County Courthouse on the right. So on this slide, well, throughout the presentation, we provided black and white elevation views, mainly to give you dimensional information of each segment of each elevation. So this is the public square facing elevation with the entrance, and then the remainder of the elevation along the pedestrian promenade to the Second Avenue parking garage. We've also provided these elevations to give you an idea of the building's relationship to the surrounding context. So in this view, you can see the Second Avenue parking garage across the alley, and then the historic county courthouse across Third on the right. And then finally, this is the Third Avenue elevation in black and white. You can again see the dimensional information, the 3-story portion of City Hall being on the left side of the elevation, then the 27-foot courtyard break, and then the transition to the 2-story commercial on the right side of the elevation. You can also see the context, so starting on the left, the 231 Public Square building on the opposite side of the pedestrian connector to the garage. In the distance, you can see St. Philip's Church on Second Avenue, the Second Avenue parking garage, the portion that's visible from the promenade. And then moving to the right, you can see the recessed 3rd-story portion of City Hall. And then on the far right, you can see the brownstones in the distance on Second Avenue, just to give you an idea of the building's relationship to the context. So this concludes this portion of the 3-story review of City Hall. So we'd like to hear your feedback.
Okay.
I might-
Who wants to go first? How about Susan? She's pondering over there, I can tell.
Well, can we go back to the elevations that show the,
Which one?
that
You-
one right there? So, did I hear you say they took the railing off? Was it the second floor they took it off of? Or-
No, it was suggested that we remove it from, it was suggested that we remove it from the 3rd story where it's shown currently. We did study it, and proportionally, it didn't look good, and we're going to be exploring design ideas on that railing, and we just feel like the human scale ornament of that railing adds a lot to the celebratory entrance. So we propose that it remains.
Okay, so could I see the elevation or the view that shows the courthouse and City Hall on the same?
This one?
Yes. So somehow, to me, in the way that the courthouse is shown, this City Hall seems to overshadow it a bit. And I know we worked really hard for that not to happen. And it may just be that the somehow because the courthouse doesn't seem to have the same prominence that we're used to seeing. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Not really. I mean, I will say that the rendering, we haven't fully rendered the courthouse and given it all the detailing that we have City Hall, so that's part of it, is the perception of the rendering, just because we're not detailing all the context to the detail of City Hall. So I bet that's part of it.
I think, yes, okay.
Yeah.
So
and
that,
then-
yeah.
Yeah,
because
and the
that-
height, just so you know, is still to the midpoint of the roof. It's just this perspective might make it feel higher, but it actually is to the midpoint of the roof, like
Right.
we've always said we're going to do.
Okay, so I think knowing that this isn't rendered to the level that you would like it to be helps me, because all along I felt like the direction was going really well. So that being the case, then I feel like that it's coming along really nicely. And it does have a strong presence and, has its own, it speaks to the courthouse, but I think it has a very classical feel. And and not necessarily in the Greek Revival way, but more kind of even Beaux-Arts. So I think that it's moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan, do you have any comments on the 3rd Avenue portion?
Let's take a look at that.
Yeah.
I think that side's working really well, actually. And I know that there was some concern about how that we didn't want to have a sense of that was an entry on the side. And I think it's been done in such a way that it has, again, a strong presence, but not confusing to people coming in.
Brian?
So first of all, I'd like to say, I think it's a stunning design. I think that the rhythm, the human scale, the light patterns, I think they all come across to say it's an important building. And and I'm really glad for all the voices, and I think you've done a great job. I would like to ask about a few things, and I do agree with the railing. I mean, the railing should stay. I think one of the questions at one time, whether it should have been a functional railing, somebody could walk out or not, but I don't think that's something I want to get into, but the railing should stay. I like that you reduced that Third Avenue side where the boardroom windows are. And I wanted to ask about just a couple of things. So at the stone headers on the second-story windows, I think they add a lot. But I was just curious on the third-story windows, what kind of header? Is that a roll lock? Is it a soldier course?
A brick soldier.
It's a brick soldier?
Yes, we were, again, in an attempt to apply the pedestrian scale, we thought your eye would stop at that second floor header with the stone and then let the top be less ornate so that it again brings the pedestrian scale down with the heavy detailing towards the base. Was
think
the
that-
reasoning there.
Yeah, I think that's a good transition for that. The other question I had was also the windows that we're currently seeing, will they have a double-hung appearance?
Yes, a true offset double hung appearance, but not operable.
Okay. The last is on the color of the brick. So what we see, and I realize this is a rendering, so we don't really see the brick color. Will it kind of be that orangey kind of, is that what's being proposed?
What we would like to propose is a similar wood mold brick that's on 231, but a color range that pulls the courthouse and the 231 colors together. So it's a mid-range of that. So we're working with Alley Cassidy Brick to pull samples together to share with you guys. And we might, I think when we did 231, we went around to buildings at Vanderbilt to
We
show
did,
the
yeah,
actual
yes.
brick. So we're planning on doing
On a
that
very
at the
cold
beginning of
January
design
day.
development.
Okay, so we'll see the brick samples
Oh,
of what it
course,
might be.
yes.
And I do understand what Ms. Besser's saying about the courthouse, and I saw that too, and then I realized that the ornate columns are not there. You're just not seeing, and I don't think it competes with the courthouse. And I don't think anyone will think this was built at the exact same time that was. So that's my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Tyler?
Thank you.
Let's start at the front elevation or one of them. That one's fine there. I love all the updates you've done. I think are really good. I think the one comment on this particular elevation is the third story of this front-facing kind of gable element. There's a lot of wall between the corner and the three arch tops. I'm curious if a pilaster would break that scale down a little bit because that's pretty broad. I think it works well on the first two floors, kind of being this cut stone or whatever it is, because it's got a little more in and out. There's some texture there with the canopy and all that, but up there it's a lot of brick mass. And I know on the Third Avenue side you have pilasters at the corner that start to indicate that rhythm that you have. So I think it could be useful there. The second floor windows, so I don't, maybe there's some precedent. Some of the other board members who've been around longer than I have might be able to tell me, but arch top double hungs, where the arch is like a clerestory type light instead of actually part of the arched window. Like the double hung, the top sash would actually be arched. I feel like that would be more in keeping with a historic district to have a double hung that's actually arched. But I don't know how that gets reconciled with the clerestories that are squared off, which I see, which I don't have a problem with those, but it's like, well, how does all that jive? Because if you did an arch top double hung, it's probably going to mess the light pattern up and not line up with the others. So I don't know how to reconcile that, but it is something that when I see a double hung window with a clerestory that's arch top, it doesn't have the same feel in a historic district as a real arch sash would. So do with that what you please, but trying to see if there's anything else note-wise. Other than that, I think on the Third Avenue side, I love everything you've done here. I feel like those hyphens did what we hoped they would do in breaking the building into kind of some more manageable pieces. The reduction, great. One of the questions that will come up again as we get to the commercial side is this promenade has become pretty wide. I think we see it later iterations on the commercial side, but I want to make sure, I think this end is developed really well with some planters and steps, but the other end seems like, man, looks like it's 30 feet wide of concrete. So I want to make sure we're sensitive to the idea that it doesn't, if there's a reason for it to be 30 feet wide, if there's going to be tables or something out there, then that's one thing. But I'd love to hear more about what happens on the other side of the boardroom bay down to the corner, because it's a lot of pavement there. So that's my comments for now.
Okay, Mary?
Well, yes, we've come a long way. And seeing it in that yellow brick doesn't help me tons, but I'm just trying to figure it won't be that color, right? I agree with put my microphone. I agree with Tyler's comments on the arched windows. The other thing I just would like you to respond to is on the Third Avenue side where we have the faux kind of Greek revival roof. I would question that that's needed, because I feel like you've really broken the side up, and I think you need to be really careful with non-functional features on historic buildings in historic districts, because they're not characteristic. So, and what will this height be compared to what we call the old First Tennessee Bank building?
So you could probably, if you go to it's stuck. I have that effect on this.
Okay, wait, I've got mine just quit spinning.
The black and white view shows probably 231.
Gotcha.
The best, with that receded fourth floor and then the third floor cornice.
So we're not over
Oh, no.
that. No.
It's way tall.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just think it's come a long way. I think it's going to be a beautiful building. I think the devil's always in the details, so I would love for us to see the windows when they're selected.
Okay.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you.
Josh?
Okay, yeah, I'm not going to repeat everything everybody else has said, but I think it's looking great. I do think that one elevation in particular that we looked at comparing it to the old courthouse is deceptive, because it looks like the peak of the roof over the main entrance is taller than the courthouse roof, and I know it's not supposed to be, so, but that would give me some concern. I really like how the building's pulled back away from 231. I think opening up that little narrow space is very helpful. The one thing I was going to just see if it was, I had two other comments. One, this marquee with the city hall on it, is that new? Or has that been in the prior iterations?
The canopy on the
Yeah, the
front.
canopy.
So it's not new. The reasoning behind that is just practical, to give
Yeah.
covering for, and then to divide the double height
Right.
glass piece from our earlier discussions.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if we'd seen that before or not, and maybe it's because everything else has worked around it as well, but when I saw it, the first thing I thought of was kind of like theater, and then I look and it's over on the 231 building, and so I just question whether that takes away from the prominence of this building should have as the major civic building, as compared to 231. And then the only other thing that I had a question about, but people way smarter than me can weigh in on it, is the light pattern in in the arch over that main entranceway. But I do have to say, like, I think it's looking so great, but that just, as I went through these elevations, that continued to catch my eye, that City Hall, that awning, just, I feel like it takes away from the prominence of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, can I make one more comment? This building, in my opinion, is going to look somewhat bigger than the county courthouse, and we need to decide we're at peace with that. When you have a shed roof and a solid mass building, and you try to say that the solid mass is going to read the same height as a shed roof, it doesn't happen. So I just make that comment.
That's good.
Anything else, Josh?
Nope, that's it for me.
Kathy?
It's really a handsome building. Could we go back to the main entrance elevation? And I believe you mentioned this too, Tyler, about the brick above the, and it's a flat brick. Okay, and maybe adding some engaged or entablature or engaged kind of columns that would follow up from where the stonework is to identify and frame those 3 windows on the 3rd level would work. What is the fenestration in the gable, the pediment?
The material, it would be limestone, cut
It's just
material.
smooth. It has no ornamentation in it.
Correct.
Okay. Not sure about that, if attention might need to come to that or another thought on that. And that gable, that peak, is it the same height as the one on the 3rd Street?
Yes.
Okay. If I were a visitor coming to town and never had seen this building, the double peaks identify entrance to me, and I would think, oh, 3rd Street's the main entrance. And then if I turn the corner, oh, the one off the square is the main entrance. So I would support eliminating the 3rd Street peak just for that argument, to identify entry further and significance.
Say that again. Eliminating what?
The peak, what do you call it?
The pediment on the 3rd Avenue.
Pediment on
side.
3rd Avenue? Because we have 2 of them, and they compete to identify entry. If I knew nothing about this building and came to town and saw it, I'd be like, oh, where's the front door? I get it on the plaza area
I do too.
as well, so I would kind of consider maybe eliminating that one. And then the fenestration on, the brick fenestration on 3rd Avenue, I like how the brick engaged pilasters work, and that's why I think it would be nice to repeat that on the main entry of that brick. It does look plain. And then, could we see the 3rd Avenue elevation again, please?
Sorry.
Well, I have my trusty associate here.
Here you go.
And I do appreciate how the building, looking at it on 3rd Avenue, tapers down towards the residential section of the neighborhood. And then we get into this colonnade of stone header arched windows there. It kind of creates its own little rhythm, but they're the only ones like that on the building. Is that true?
No, we're getting ready to look at that 2-story commercial portion of the building in more detail in the
Okay.
next slides, and you'll
Okay.
see how that relates.
Then I will be quiet.
Thank you very much.
But I do like the handrail, the ironwork on the front entry, and as well as in the courtyard area.
Okay.
So
Thank
those
you.
2 tie each other together.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chair, someone made the comment about the pediment over the front functional door being plain. We have a lot of buildings downtown that have the date of construction, and that could be carved into that or somehow.
That it?
Mr. Chair, I had one other
right,
just
go ahead.
comment or question. what material are we planning on for the front doors?
It'll be a bronze-clad door,
Okay,
so with wood interior.
that sounds great. I was thinking bronze would really set off that interior and be a way to say this is the front of the building and where you go in.
Thank you.
Okay, my comments on the front, I go along with what Tyler said about some type of brick, pilaster, or whatever on that third floor. I think that would be a good feature to have. I struggle when I first look at this, and I did the last time, with just the mass at the entrance, all that limestone. But I hadn't heard anybody really talk about that, so I'm going to defer to the real experts up here on that. So I think but going to the Third Avenue side, I really like the Third Avenue side. I just think that's a great treatment all along the way. Yes, to Kathy's comment, probably that makes a lot of sense to take that, I'm gonna call it the triangle, off the roof, so it's not confusing with where the entrance is. But the way the Third Avenue, the treatment on that and how it steps down, I just think it's great. And it takes out the mass that exists right now, the 425 feet that's along Third Avenue now. I had it on previous notes that it's like 235, 285 now. That's the reduced amount, I believe. That's the footprint on Third Avenue before you get to that, whatever you call that end piece on Church Street.
Correct. So this gives you the dimensions. So 144 feet is the three-story portion.
Okay.
Then 27 feet for the courtyard, and then 85 feet for the two-story commercial.
Okay, so that's about, right, two something.
Yes, you're correct, overall.
Okay. And then the setback what are the setbacks from the square and then for Third Avenue from the street? And how does that compare to what it is now? They're moved back, I know.
So the pedestrian promenade, I believe it's around 15 to 18 feet. We've gone to 33 feet. We've pushed it back.
Okay,
And
okay,
to
okay.
Tyler's point, we're still working on the landscape, but the crepe myrtles will remain, and we'll have some green in there.
And then from Third Avenue,
Third Avenue, we have we looked at the courthouse setback from the sidewalk curb, and we maintained that same streetscape.
okay. All right. And that's all I got. I think that, I really do like the Third Avenue representation. And I think, looking somewhere down the road, whether it's 30 years, 40 years, if needed, could an additional floor be put there? If on top of the two floors?
I don't know if-
Except you got a third
if all
floor
the
set, you got a
rules
third
change.
floor set, a third story setback. How far back is it from the front here now? I don't,
The third floor is even with the second floor. If we had a fourth floor, it would have to be set back, but all of our mechanical units are up there, so it's highly unlikely
Okay,
that
all right.
we'll build a fourth floor, but we're allowing the commercial, the two-story portion is supposed to be that growth space, and then the park space,
right.
we're gonna, it'll be
You
park,
could-
so we could just keep adding
ahead,
towards
okay.
church on a lower scale.
if needed, it'll be
Yeah.
long past all of us, probably.
Yes.
Okay. Unless somebody, you got something else?
The only thing I'd say is there's going, I'm asking, is there going to be any type of utilities on Third Avenue? We've had those air conditioning units, bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
And is,
No.
I'm so happy they're going. And so there'll be
Nothing
nothing.
visible from Third Avenue.
Lovely. Thank you.
Okay. We're ready for the
Ready?
next part.
Okay.
Kelly, are
Let
you?
me get
Anna
some-
Ruth. It's all Anna Ruth.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So, like we mentioned, we're going to look at the two-story portion of the building. In our last meeting with you, we showed preliminary sketches and looked at some case study imagery. So this slide shows you key plans for the 3D renderings, colored renderings that we have of this portion of the building. They're all taken at eye level. The top one's from across Third Avenue, looking at that southeast corner. One from Third Avenue, as if you're in a vehicle looking at the same corner, and then on the sidewalk along the building at the bottom. We've also included this image on this slide as a reminder of the case study image that resonated most with the committee in our last meeting. The committee suggested we avoid white or black storefronts and that the green may be a nice change. The green, the patina copper green that you see in this image is what's intended to be on the renderings if it doesn't match it exactly. So again, this view is taken from across Third Avenue. Based on our review of the initial sketches and case study imagery with you in the last meeting, the commercial building has retail storefronts in the copper patina green color on either end of the building with a hyphen storefront in between that would have wood detailing and a warm white color, blending nicely with the stone accents on the remainder of the building. The brick color and material changes on this portion of the building from the City Hall color, signifying the mixed use of the building. And as mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, we'll be reviewing exterior material samples with you during the next phase before we formally apply for a COA. Based on the feedback received on the sketches, we are showing a more simplified stone cornice with small stone brackets. And then as the commercial turns the corner to face the park, we're planning for open plaza space for potential outdoor seating that you can see in the rendering. As discussed in prior meetings, the loading and service zone for City Hall and the commercial portion of the building is behind this partial height screen wall where you see the gate coming through to the plaza area. The final design of the screen wall will be further developed as the park design progresses, but the intent is to have green all along that edge to soften that edge and further screen the service portions of the building. So the second view of the two-story commercial is taken from Third Avenue, looking down Third towards City Hall, and then you can see back along the east elevation to that service portion and the outdoor seating area next to the commercial. And then this view taken from the sidewalk adjacent to the building. Again, you can see the two-story portion of the building, and then the courtyard break, and then the three-story City Hall in the distance. And again, we've provided a black and white elevation. Keep in mind that this has no park elements in front of it, and so it's not the way you'll experience this elevation, but we did want to share it so you can see the overall elevation and the dimensional information of the segments, and then also the surrounding context again. So on the left, you can see a little portion of Biscuit Love's two-story porch, the historic county courthouse in the distance down Third. And then on the right, on the other side of the alley, you can see the Second Avenue parking garage in relation to the building, and then 231 Public Square at the other end of the alley beyond. So that is all on the two-story portion. That was really fast, but love to hear your comments.
That's fine. Susan?
Okay, can we go back to the rendering that shows? This one's good. I think the having a color, and I think the green works really well rather than a black or white, really makes this feel warmer. One of the things I think is interesting is that you simplified the cornice, but honestly, I think that it's too simplified. And so maybe the brackets need to be a little bigger or something, but it's like you've got this really beautiful, like detail, the cornice over the, display windows. And I look up and I'm thinking, it's just doesn't quite ring true with the other part of it. But otherwise, I think it works really well.
Brian?
So this section, I think we have to be a little more sensitive about because it actually transitions into the residential part. And you'll notice from Main Street north, it's all commercial. It seems all the residentials turn commercial. South, it's still residential. So I want to be real sensitive to this. So one of the things I look at on the windows is something that Tyler brought up a little earlier on the arches. The way the arches are done, and your eye stops right at the bottom of the arch, or actually the window hood. And I think it would look much better if it went all the way. It was a true arched window. And Emily, do you have that image? So this is going to be an example of historic building downtown Franklin. And you can see how your eye takes you all the way up into that arch. You have a division like double hung, but then it has a small muntin that runs down the very center. And I think something like this could provide a softer approach into the residential rather than the multi-panes that are currently there that give it more of a contemporary commercial look. And then I would, and Emma, if you can go back to the image that we were just looking at on Third Avenue. So the multi-light pattern of the panes in the storefronts. If we were looking at an earlier time period where larger pieces of glass were not available for what this style is Italianate, then I would say you need all those multiple light patterns. But since we're really talking about later 1800s, in that styling, I know Italianate can be earlier, but here what we're seeing is late 1800s. I think if you had a solid plate glass storefront window, that could still provide that historic look that we see downtown and transition into that residential a little bit better too. And then one other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is they look like limestone just blocks that are below the window hoods on each side. And I didn't know if you were planning to step that back or corbel or something to soften that back to the building.
Yeah, there'll be more of a bracket, a profile piece that'll support that brick arch. We just haven't detailed it yet. And then I did forget to mention that we did make the storefronts modular based on our discussions last time so that the door can have flexibility in where it goes in the storefront too. And we had only divided the lights, again, in respect to the residential scale to try to bring down that scale, but we'll definitely look at it with full plate glass.
And
windows
one
as
thing, so
well.
on the look of this, so the way the Italianate's on the left, the Italianate's on the right, they could have that softer approach, but I think in the center, that for it staying the same gives you that difference and change over time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Tyler? Yeah, go ahead.
So I've been working with my students in a project in Selma, and there's actually a Gothic Revival commercial building, and I can send you a picture of it, but they have something in this probably very similar time frame, but they have large, big panes, but not all glass, and so they're broken up, and I'll send you that picture, but I think that might be kind of not all glass, but not as many multi-pane as what you have. All right, thank you.
And to tag onto that, I didn't bring it up just because for simplicity, but there are photographs of downtown Franklin in the early 1900s that show large panes that are broken up with double pane and with muntins. And so, those are historically accurate too. It's just I was thinking that was simpler, but I agree, you could do that.
Tyler?
I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what everybody else has said. I think the multiple panes down below, I probably had expected to see kind of a continuation of that line from the entry doors has this clerestory window, and usually you see that horizontal carry through, and you have plate below and something above, and you can walk through downtown, and almost every store has a lower big plate glass and then some piece of glass up higher. The detailing around the windows, these hoods, I think they seem just really big to me. They're definitely bold, and if it's an Italianate detailing, then that's part of that. But I think part of it is there's some brick between the window and the hood. And I think as those come down and actually touch the brick mold, which is the traditional kind of detailing of that type of treatment, those will scale down just a little bit, which I think will help. They seem really heavy for as skinny as the window is. I think it's just that brick gap. Again, the cornice is a little light on detail, but I think that's easy to fix. The center section, I I don't know that I've seen, is that painted or is it cut stone or what do you?
No, it's a warm white paint. You're not seeing, there's some recessed, flat panels,
Inside
in the
there. Okay.
banding, so there's more
I
detail
think I saw that on
to
the
it.
elevation, had a little more line
Yeah.
work. The fact that it's kind of paneled above the second story windows and then turns to brick is a little peculiar when it comes to historic structures. I've seen some things like that, but typically we'll see that wood treatment on the first floor and then it transitions to that other material. Not to say the mullions between the windows may not be treated in wood, but what is setting that the top of the wood painted?
It was relating to the decorative arches above
The
the
head of
windows.
the arches, okay. Yeah, it's just, in my mind, it's this, there's a heaviness of brick that's above kind of a wood element that doesn't have a very pronounced cornice there. So whereas the two bookend buildings, you have a pretty substantial cornice, thick columns at the corners. In my mind, you say, okay, yeah, I can buy, this is supporting the brick above. That center section seems a little petite to have brick sitting
Up
above it. So if that were a little more pronounced, I like the idea of it. I don't know that I've seen it, but if it were a little more pronounced kind of cornice there where that breaks, I think it would say, I'm strong enough to hold this
Yeah.
brick up. And then a lot of the same comments about arched windows and all that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mary?
It's on. Well, I would concur that the arches look heavy. I like what you've done from that inspiration photo. Can we look at that one more time? And part of the beauty of that is that wrapped corner, which we're not getting. But I agree with maybe the glass and it be multi-pane, but maybe bigger. And there are some historic photographs you can look at. And I think the arches on those windows are a lot softer and to scale than what we're seeing. I agree with Tyler's comments on the middle building, and I would not want to approve this building at historic zoning without really seeing the elevations of every side of the building.
Okay,
If you've got them, like,
We do have them in this presentation. so-
Okay.
And we're gonna get to the alley next.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Josh?
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat everything. I think it's really coming together and looking really good overall. I will tag on to the that center portion to the non-architect in the group. That connector brick read very heavy to me, and I couldn't think of another example where I'd seen something like that. So, but I think overall it's looking great.
Kathy?
I picked up on you saying that as far as the storefront portion, with the door and then the storefront windows are occurring, that you're going to modulize that so that they could put the door in any of those. I think that's very clever. And then that relationship of those three windows and then the entranceway, how does that relate to those four windows above? If those gets, if the brick detailing gets scaled or minimized down, do the windows stay the same?
Yes, and I think we'll look at making it less busy with the light pattern differentiation.
Okay, I
like
think
others.
that'll make the storefront floor read even better, I think, and then a better tease toward the residential section. Also, too, you selecting a different brick for this portion compared to the City Hall. Is it one brick for City Hall and then one brick for this section as well, or is there combinations or blendings?
We'll definitely want them to relate to each other, but it will be a different brick. It'll probably have the same texture like a wood mold brick like you
Okay.
see on 231, but since it's mixed use, zoning ordinance requires that we change the materiality of the building.
Had you considered the arched brick work on the second level, maybe interjecting combination brick to accentuate that feature?
Like a
Just-
different brick on the arches. I think they might get even heavier. We can look at that for sure, but I think it might bring your eye up too much, and you might not want to bring attention to that. I think in the detailing of the arches and pulling them in and looking at these stone brackets, it might
I just
solve
mentioned that because I thought that image photo that you dropped in with the corner storefront, I think it had
Variation in the
differentiation in the
little-
brick, and I thought that added a lot of handsomeness to it. But again, more of a residential touch with that little detailing, little things like that. And then to Susan's comment about the cornice over the retail, beefing that up, I think really will add oomph to it.
Okay,
Thank you.
that
great,
it?
thank you.
I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has said, so what are your thoughts on signage? And how many tenants are planned for this?
So it can be 2 or 3 tenants,
2 or 3, okay.
just by size and leasability, really.
So based on your inspirational photo, you're talking about a projecting arm
Projecting
sign
arm
rather than
sign.
letters flat on the building? Mm-hmm. Okay. That would be my,
Especially since we're bringing people down Third Avenue, there
Yes.
needs to
Oh,
be
yeah, I
something that.
understand. No, I
yeah,
understand.
Yeah,
I think that's the cleanest way because probably, perhaps, tenants will change.
yes.
And that's all I've
Okay.
got. Does anybody have anything else? Okay, let's go.
Oh, my goodness. I thought
Number
we were do-
3.
I thought we were doing well.
We're pretty
Okay.
close.
All right.
Evolution along the alley.
Yes, so these are the final renderings. We took views from each end of the alley. So the top one's taken from the public square end of the alley, and the other one's taken from the east end, close to the parking garage entrance that you can see at the bottom. So this is a close-up view of the north elevation from the public square end of the alley, right at the end of the pedestrian promenade. And based on the feedback we received in our last meeting, we altered the design of this facade to be more in keeping with the design of City Hall, since the committee thought the initial elevation concept was too industrial-looking and foreign to the rest of the building. The City Hall language now turns the corner from the pedestrian promenade. It maintains similar rhythm and design to the rest of City Hall. You'll see in the following rendering how the City Hall language transitions to the commercial building design that we just looked at on the previous slides. So this elevation is over 200 feet in length, and the building is mixed use. So we're required by the zoning ordinance to alter the elevation design language of a portion of the building that exceeds 200 feet. We've altered the eastern segment of this elevation in materiality, window head height, sill height, shape, and altered the parapet height to comply with the zoning ordinance requirements and to make the transition to the 2-story retail portion facing Third Avenue that we just looked at. So this portion of the elevation on the end wraps around the east elevation, which is the elevation that faces the park, and on around to the 2-story commercial portion of the building. Therefore, the brick on this portion of the facade will match the brick on the east elevation and on the commercial that we just looked at. The landscape along the alley, just to note, is shown generically right now because we just haven't gotten there with the landscape, so. And then this black and white elevation, again, gives you the dimensions. So you can see the City Hall portion of the building extends 186 feet east on the alley, and then transitions to the 39-foot segment that you're seeing in the different brick. And then the parking garage entry is on the end. That's that relaxed arch. And then on the left, the context that we're showing is the Cornerstone Church on the other side of Third. That would be opposite the park on Church. And then on the other end, the pedestrian promenade, you can see a little sliver of the gray 231 Public Square building, so you can see the height of that. And then in the distance, the F&M Bank beyond at the square. So that's alley elevation.
Okay, Susan.
All right, can we go back to the rendering?
Do you want this end or the
Yes,
other
no,
end?
that's it. So the windows that are on this end, is that like they have a brick relieving arch? Is that just trim that's in that part there, or?
Yeah, it's meant to look similar to like a steel lintel, but it'll be in the window materiality. The reason being is the interior of this building still remains City Hall. So when you're in the space, we didn't want to see too many varieties of windows within an open office space.
Okay.
But since we have the regulations, so it's our way of trying to make that transition interior and exterior work well together.
Okay. And then, that's another entrance there at that,
So that's staff entry.
Staff
from
en- okay.
So it's a secure entrance, and then the louvers are screen mechanical units, and then you go down to the parking
Okay.
garage in that arched opening.
I feel like it works well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron?
I feel like it works well as well. Thank you.
Tyler?
No comments. Looks good.
Whoa. Mary?
I agree.
Yep, thumbs up here.
Kathy?
Like the 2 brick changes again. Like the 2 brick changes again and identifying the entry with the canopy. I know we talked about the canopy before. Is that a metal canopy, brass?
It'll be probably a green pre-finished metal that'll match the window trim, just
Okay,
to
but it
kinda
won't
tile
match
that.
the entry to,
Oh, no, it
City
won't be
Hall.
the same
Okay,
material. No.
looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Mission accomplished.
Well, thank you. Thank you for y'all's feedback. This has been a group effort, so thank you for all your input.
Thank you. Okay.
Look at that time.
See, we did it.
We did
Yeah,
it in
we
an
did it.
hour.
We did it.
Did it.
Look
Great
at
job.
us.
Anybody got
everybody.
anything else? Otherwise, we're adjourned.
Where's dinner from?